haven't seen the situation, really come down to a level where we feel very comfortable. As I said earlier in my press conference, we're watching this very, very closely. We remain deeply concerned. We've not seen any move by the Russians from a military perspective that they're willing to de-escalate the tensions around Ukraine.
Okay, that was Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins me now. Mr. Secretary, seems to me there's a couple of threats out there right now. Russia threatening to send troops to Cuba and Venezuela, and rockets, the threat number 2, rockets probably fired by Iranians at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad.
Ever since the time I was a small boy, I've heard prophecy teachers and pastors teach about Gog and Magog and the countries of the north, those that would come in the last days and come to Israel. And so when we see things stirring in the north country, as Daniel talked about a bear, and history knows Russia as the Russian bear, it causes us to open our eyes when we look at news stories and see the old Russian bear doing things to get the world's attention. It's interesting that in the book of Ezekiel says the bear has 3 ribs in its mouth and devours much flesh. I don't know of any country that has seen more bloodshed or has caused more bloodshed than the communist spirit and move that's come across the world in the last century. And even though we consider Hitler such a terrible man, killing approximately 17 million people, we know history tells us that Stalin killed 20 million people, that under his direction and through the purges and the wars, the things that he brought about with his people, these kind of things happened under his direction. And so as we see Russia in the last days again beginning to stir itself, it causes us in the time clock of prophecy to be very, very aware. God informs Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 15, you will come from your place in the far north. The Hebrew word means the uttermost parts of the north. What's north of Jerusalem? Well, if you fly an airplane directly north from Jerusalem, you're going to go right into Moscow. The Bible also mentions Meshech, which some believe is the old ancient name for Moscow. What is north of Russia? Well, nothing. So Meshech is the old name for the capital of Western Russia, if we believe that, what is now known as Moscow. Then we know there's some reasons to pay attention when Russia begins to stir itself, as we've seen. But the objective now is not to become distracted at what's around us, but to look up. For Jesus said, when you see these things begin to come to pass, when these things just start, don't wait for their fulfillment, wait for these things to start. And when you do, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Now, put the car in gear. Let's get our face in the carpet. Let's spend some time in prayer and in word and find out what God's telling us for this week, this Wednesday, and the rest of our lives.